significant softening of his olfactory bulbs, the part of the brain that process smell. Walnut size, that's big. The brain damage can't be underestimated. It was underestimated in his life, but looking back, he had clear evidence of impaired brain function in the most important part of the brain for planning your future and for managing your emotions and regulating your behaviour. So the outstanding findings on the coroner's report were the various factors that would have contributed to his state of mind. And there's about 4 really significant factors. He had a walnut-sized lesion in his frontal lobe and 2 smaller lesions, and significant softening of his olfactory bulbs, the part of the brain that process smell. Walnut size, that's big. The brain damage can't be underestimated. It was underestimated in his life, but looking back, he had clear evidence of impaired brain function in the most important part of the brain for planning your future and for managing your emotions and regulating your behaviour. The problem with brain damage is that quite often the loved ones and everyone around the person, if they don't realise that what they're dealing with is a brain injury, they might interpret the behaviour as alcohol problems or drug problems, and they might not necessarily treat the person in quite the way that they would if they knew that this was the result of brain damage. If you thought that this was a brain injury, you would treat the person very differently and you'd have a different pathway of recovery for them. It's really sad that more wasn't done and known about it at the time. Obviously, he had brain damage. That was 1. 2, he was obviously heavily intoxicated, which of course would exaggerate your emotions and your behaviours. 3, he was sleep deprived. He'd been awake for about 24 hours. And 4, he was going through a number of very stressful circumstances. He'd received those phone calls and then he'd had a series of conversations that would be very distressing. There was a perfect storm of factors to make him impulsive. Sleep deprivation makes you impulsive, alcohol makes you impulsive, frontal lobe brain damage makes you impulsive. When people commit suicide, in the final moments, they are often ambivalent about what they're doing. And we know this from solid studies of people who have had very serious suicide attempts and miraculously survived. When we ask those people, what were you thinking at the time you attempted to kill yourself? It's very common for people to be intoxicated. And they normally say that they were in an agitated state of mind, distressed, and they were jumping around from one thing to another. Mostly it is not a thought-out, considered decision like the public imagines. Mostly it's chaotic in the last moments. Because if you just delay people a little bit, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, circumstances often intervene. Their mind quickly changes and they decide to get help. Someone walks by and says, "Excuse me, you look distressed, can I help you?" That's what happens in the final moments. They're chaotic. They're not considered. Whatever the thoughts were going through his head, it was clearly chaotic. This is not a person who made a considered decision to leave this world. This is a person whose brain was exhausted, full of alcohol, and who had a background of brain damage that contributes to being impulsive. He clearly contributed to the acts that led to his death, and he may well have intended it in the moment. It is suicide in the sense that they took their own life, but it's an accident in the sense that it was really just timing and circumstances and what went on, and if that had have happened on another day, the outcome would not have been the same. It's an accident in the sense that it was really just timing and circumstances and what went on, and if that had have happened on another day, the outcome would not have been the same.